of learners. So think about what you think of when you hear the word inclusion. Many of you have had experiences with early childhood special education, and so you are able to recognize that an ever-increasing number of infants and young children with and without disabilities learn together in a variety of places, such as homes and child care programs, early childhood centers, neighborhoods, to name a few. Promoting children's development and sense of belonging for every child is widely held as an important value among early childhood professionals, families, and throughout society. Early childhood inclusion is the term used to reflect these societal views. It's important to note that inclusion is not a physical space. One of the things that we know from years of research is that simply putting different children together with or without disabilities of the same race and different races, of the same backgrounds and different backgrounds, and putting together children who have different languages, just by putting them in the same classroom or play group, will not automatically result in children actively participating and interacting with one another. Children need support and guidance from early childhood practitioners to take advantage of the materials and activities and to interact with other children. Early childhood practitioners need to use effective recommended practices to ensure that all children can participate in productive ways. We're going to be looking at an important definition that is guided by our early childhood governing bodies. And so the National Association for the Education of Young Children, NAEYC, and the Division for Early Childhood have a joint statement on inclusion, that early childhood inclusion embodies values, policies, and practices, and that these practices support the right of every child to fully be a member and a participant within their school, community, family, and society. The desired results of inclusive experiences for young children with and without disabilities and their families include a sense of belonging and membership. So inclusion does more than just help children learn content. It helps them to be members of a productive society where positive social relationships can be achieved. The defining features of inclusion, which is really critical for this content talk and several to come, and a focus of your work, will be on the fact that we need to have inclusion that helps provide access, participation, and supports to the learner. This definition of inclusion and the full joint position statement is available in this session's readings. Let's talk about benefits of inclusion. This video clip is going to show some practices happening in an inclusive program. As the previous video demonstrated, the teachers were helping to support peers who are different have interactions with one another. Certainly we could think of other ways that we would be able to provide supports for those relationships to develop. Let's think further with this video.
Is it okay if I sit right here and watch TV? I'm in line. Is it okay? How does it say in here? They have to be done. That's what happened. Let's go watch it. Hi, you guys. Here.
What's interesting about this video is we don't know which children are the children who have IEPs or maybe have related services and other early intervention strategies that are being used to help them determine and help them determine the goals for the children, but also how to help support the children to reach these goals. In the previous video, it was very easy to pick out the child who had special needs based on the physical disabilities. So it's interesting to note that sometimes in an inclusive program, we see all children as children. There's a growing research base on the benefits of early childhood inclusion. Some of the main findings when inclusion is done well are that children with and without disabilities demonstrate improved developmental outcomes. Children without disabilities have more positive attitudes towards people with disabilities. As we saw with the first video, that was definitely a good demonstration of children supporting other children with disabilities. The success of any inclusive classroom or program comes down to three main things: ensuring that all children have access to materials, activities, and environments, helping all children participate in meaningful ways in the learning activities and interactions with other children, and taking advantage of the supports available so that we can meet the needs of all children. So, access, supports, and participation. Inclusion is great. It's good for everyone. Better social and academic outcomes are achieved by all students. We know that programs have benefits for children, not just those without disabilities, and inclusion is one important factor for how to make that happen. In addition, teachers' beliefs are important about this. If you believe that these practices matter, you're more likely to enact them on a consistent basis and in a way that's going to provide the most effectiveness for children. Finally, the DEC and NAEYC definition emphasizes the right that all children have to inclusive programs. Not only is an inclusive early childhood education a best practice, it is a legal right for families of young children. Let's look at the benefits of inclusion. The DEC NAEYC definition includes three features of inclusion that can be used to identify high-quality programs: access, participation, and support. Access. Access is when we provide a wide range of activities and environments for every learning child. We remove physical barriers and we think of multiple ways for children to participate. True inclusion means that children can access and take advantage of all sorts of activities and opportunities in a wide range of settings. This means we need to think about barriers that might make these activities and opportunities inaccessible for some children. It's important to stop and think about your own classroom. One of the assignments for this session is to look at the features of inclusion, access, participation, and support. Describe what that type of feature is emphasizing for inclusive practices, and then examine different practices throughout the text and throughout other content talks that are presented and the webinar that's presented, and to highlight those practices. Then you're going to think about ideas for changing in your current classroom. So this will be a column that you complete in the features of inclusion chart that it can be found at this week's session. You'll complete that column and you'll be thinking forward to your upcoming classroom. If you're currently in a classroom, you can most certainly use the classroom that you're currently in. But you want to project yourself to things that you're actually going to do. What is it that you can gain from thinking about these different components of inclusion? So it might be helpful to pause the content talk, pull up that features of inclusion chart, and really it's just a graphic organizer to help you pull those across the different areas. You'll want to also think about what are your experiences with access? As you think about your experiences for ensuring that all children can access the current classroom, you want to think about physical access to all of the activities and opportunities. Are there spaces that may be children in wheelchairs or children who have other physical disabilities or implications for them? Maybe there are things that are out of reach for children. Maybe there are not materials that are available at their level. Also think about children who are able to communicate, in ways that they can initiate and respond. That's also a part of access. Participation means using a range of instructional approaches to engagement and play, learning activities, and a sense of belonging for every child. So when we're thinking about participation, that means it is our job to make sure that all children can find ways to participate in the activities of the classroom. The implication. Supports refer to broader aspects of the system, such as professional development, incentives for inclusion, and opportunities for communication and collaboration among families and professionals to assure high quality inclusion. So support might come from professional development, such as workshops, training materials, coursework, on-the-job coaching, and support from administrators that shows inclusion is valued. So we think about the support that teachers need in order to make classroom inclusion and classroom inclusive teaching strategies work daily. The prior slide that I could not get to advance back to was talking about the implications of participation. And of course, it is pretty much a no-brainer. If children are not able to fully participate in the learning environment, they're not going to learn as best as they can. One of the features of this week's learning sessions is called the UDL Principles, Universal Design for Learning. UDL really does a comprehensive job of helping teachers understand the different ways that children can access and participate in their learning environment, the way that teachers can represent the content. And so, some children who have communication issues, it cannot be all talking to them for them to learn. They need visual experiences, they need real life experiences. And so that UDL principles video that is a part of the resources for this week and goes with the discussion board can expand these ideas of inclusive features. So what are the implications of support? You want to think about what are your support experiences and just reflect on, how do those experiences help support your ability to implement inclusive components in your practice. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be conducting the Features of Inclusion assignment, and this will help you reflect on all of the components that you've learned so far. And this document will help you go through the 3 different features of inclusion, to identify what those mean, and then identify key practices involved. This is the end of this content talk.